Good evening. That was a bit of a shock. My bad. Okay, welcome to VNatB 22. The last one. Here we go. Opening music tonight was from Martin Stevenson and Leonard Cohen. I don't think I'll ever get over this. So thanks to Sony for that. Tonight, reading in our final weekly virtual bar, we have Lauren North, CD Major, Kate Medina, Kia Abdullah, Karen Hamilton, Stu Turton, Rachel Ward, and Emma Curtis. Woo! Quick word. If you hear me give a woo and you haven't been to the bar before, it might sound sarcastic. It's not sarcastic, it's genuine. I just sound sarcastic, okay? Just accept it in the way it's meant. I'm Vic Watson. Welcome. If you haven't been before, where have you been the last 22 weeks? If you have been here before, you've heard this story, but I'm sorry, it's our last night and I have to tell it. Noir at the Bar started in Philadelphia in 2008, thanks to Peter Rozovsky. Since then, it has been all over America, across a fair amount of the UK, and now in your homes, thanks to lockdown. So, you know, it's not all bad, or maybe it is, I don't know. There's lots of people in the chat saying that they're in sunny blue sky places. I'm in a very grey, wet, miserable place, and that feels like the perfect fallacy to end VNatB 22 on. It's really mirroring my mood today. As you might have seen on Twitter, I've already been on the pop. And I don't usually keep corks, but I think this one is so special I might have to just put it on the bookcase of shame or fame, whichever way you want to look at it. If you would like to enter the draw to win a free book this evening, please email vnatb20@gmail.com with the subject heading enter. Yes, we're going classic for this evening's subject heading. If you hear something impressive, give us a woo! And also when I'm picking names from the not so tatty, not so ratty hat that I've just nearly dropped, give us a drum roll as though we're in the real bar. I really miss the drum rolls, but I'll know you're doing it in spirit. If you hear something you like the sound of tonight, please drop it in the chat with just quote of the week beside it, because we would like you to nominate things that sound good for quote of the week. As always, you have the Q&A button around here on the bottom of your screen, unless you're watching on a tablet, in which case I don't know where it is. And you also have the chat button. Please don't chat while people are reading, that's just rude. I'm getting all teachery for the final evening. And if you do have a question for any of our authors tonight, drop it in the Q&A and I shall endeavour to ask it, okay? I think the time for me to stop speaking is now. I'm not saying Simon's given it a bit of that, he's not really. But anyway, let's get the hat out. Get your drums out, give us a drum roll please folks, and I will pick the first victim. Drum roll, drum, drum. Stuart Turton. So excited for this one. Stuart Turton is a freelance travel journalist who has previously worked in Shanghai and Dubai. Woo! The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle was his debut novel, and I believe his next one is due out in the next couple of weeks. Stuart will be able to advise us on this. He is the winner of the Brighton and Hove Short Story Prize and was longlisted for the BBC Radio 4 Open Lines competition. Woo! He lives with his wife, an adorable daughter in West London. So everyone, huge round of applause for Stu Turton.
Hello everybody. Sorry, that's an incredibly old profile from about 47 years ago. That's all right. Like, yes, I now actually make a proper living as an author, and it's very exciting, and I highly recommend it. It's brilliant. So I'm going to read from my next book tonight, if that's okay, because I've read from 7 Deaths for every night pretty much for the last 2.5 years, and I will shoot myself if I have to do it again. So I'm going to read you from The Devil in Dark Water, which is my next book. This is the proof of that book, and it's incredibly beautiful and very, very lovely, and I work with incredibly talented people. I started a weird tradition in 7 Deaths where I never read the first page or the first line or the first even chapter of my book. So I'm going to carry on with this one for no reason whatsoever. I'm just going to read you from page 6, which is kind of when the bad guy turns up. and I'm immensely proud of my bad guy in this book. So please do bear with me. As ever, I'll do a quick, terrible recap because I've not had to do an elevator pitch for this book because all the events were cancelled in the lead up. So this is the first time I've appeared to anybody with this book. So it's set in 1634, and it's about a group of passengers who get on a boat and they're leaving the East Indies and they're going all the way over to Amsterdam. It's a 10-month voyage. And they get on the boat, everything's hunky-dory for a couple of days, and then supernatural things start happening on the boat. Really, and they escalate and they build up to an impossible murder. Thankfully, the world's foremost detective, some might say Sherlock Holmesian, but copyright forbids it, but a Sherlock Holmesian sort of detective is on board, and his faithful sidekick, Aaron, they're on board. Unfortunately, my Holmesian-style detective is locked up for crimes, and the reader doesn't know why. And nobody else on the boat knows why either. So he can't do anything about it. So it's up to Aaron, his loyal bodyguard, and his Watson to kind of solve the crime in his stead. So that's basically what this is about. So we're going to leap in straight to page 6, where my bad guy turns up. Hear me, commanded a jagged voice from above them. Squinting into the glare of sunlight, they craned their necks, following the voice upwards. A figure in grey rags was standing on a pile of crates. Bloody bandages wrapped his hands and face, a narrow gap left for his eyes. A leper, muttered Drecht in disgust. Also, I should point out, this book has got a million Dutch names in it, none of which I know how to pronounce because I only read them in the research and I've never had to say them out loud before. So I'm just taking a spin at every single one of these names as we go along. Apologies for that. So if you're Dutch, then I'm completely screwing this up. Aaron took an instinctive step backwards. From boyhood, he'd been taught to fear these wasted people. His mere presence was enough to bring ruin to an entire village. Ooh, hello. A single cough, even the lightest touch, meant a lingering, dreadful death. Kill that creature and burn it, commanded the Governor-General from the front of the procession. Lepers are not permitted in my city. A commotion erupted as every musketeer peered at the others. The figure was too high up for pikes, and their muskets had already been loaded onto the Sardam. None of them had a bow. Seemingly oblivious to the panic, the lepers' eyes pricked every single person gathered before them. Know that my master. His roaming gaze snagged on Aaron's, causing the mercenary's heart to jolt. Sails aboard the Sardam. He is the lord of hidden things, all desperate and dark things. He offers this warning in accordance with the old laws. The Sardam's cargo is sin, and all who board her will be brought to merciless ruin. She will not reach Amsterdam. As the last word was uttered, the hem of his robe burst into flames. Children wailed. The watching crowd gasped and screamed in horror. The leper didn't make a sound. The fire crawled up his body until he was completely aflame. He didn't move. He burned silently, his eyes fixed on Aaron's. I'm doing really short reading, but as with Seven Deaths, the entire book is basically one long list of spoilers, and if I go any further than that or start any earlier, I'll spoil loads and loads of stuff. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that terribly small snippet, and I hope you enjoy the book when it comes out. Thank you for having me.
Stu, we've got a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Anonymous, I don't know who that is, obviously. What was your inspiration for Seven Deaths? It is so unusual. They are loving it.
Oh, that's great. Seven Deaths was an idea that was about 12 years in the making. So I wanted to write an Agatha Christie novel, and I tried it when I was 21, and it was terrible. It was really dreadful. It was worse than anything that's ever been written by any human being and any monkey given a pen. It was terrible. And I realized I didn't have an original idea. So I went away to come up with an original idea thinking it would take a week or a month, and it took 12 years. And I had it when I was in Dubai, and the inspiration it's that awful thing, it wasn't any particular inspiration. I was just on a plane at 2 a.m. and the entire novel kind of turned up in my head, and it was all just waiting for me. It was like and I think it was just like my entire childhood, everything I'd loved in my childhood just was there, and I was just like, well, what if I do Agatha Christie with a Groundhog Day loop and a bit of body swapping, because how much more complicated and difficult and hard can I possibly make this? And then it was just about sitting down and actually writing it, which then took another year and a half. As anybody who's ever sat down to write a novel knows, you do need a clear period. And sadly, no huge inspiration, just a lot of waiting and procrastination and hard work.
Excellent, thank you. And Effie Merrill would like to know, how long did it take you to plot your new novel compared to Seven Deaths?
Exactly the same amount of time. So I'm a bit of a superstitious dude, it turns out. I didn't realise this until I started writing. Yeah, so Seven Deaths did quite well, and I sort of, not want to replicate the success, but it was a really hard, complicated book, and I never, all the way through it, I didn't think I could pull it off until sort of the last, honestly, month of it, when things started to really pull together. So I tried to replicate as much of it as possible, including the 3 months planning at the beginning of the novel. So for Seven Deaths, I just planned it solidly for 3 months and didn't write a word of the novel. And I did the same for Devil. I just sat down for 3 months and planned the entire thing from first page to last page. And and it seemed to have worked. But at the same time, I had the newborn baby. So she was born, as Vic well knows, suffering her own self. She was born, I think, a month before I started writing Devil, and I finished it 2 days after her second birthday. So her entire life accompanies the writing of this book, which is why there's so many typos in it.
Well, I feel so much better now for that, actually. I've got another excellent. Danny Marshall actually says, Seven Deaths is the only review I've done on Amazon that I got in trouble for from my girlfriend, and I blame Stu. And now everybody is asking Danny to tell the story. So we're going to wait for that patiently, Danny, so crack on. But in the meantime, Alex Hawley would like to know, after setting your first novel in a period house, what made you set this on a boat?
Because I set my first novel in a period house, pretty much. In my head, I have got a list of ideal locations for murder mysteries. And period house was one of them, because I was writing an Agatha Christie homage. Was the second one because boats are brilliant. Like, boats are just fantastic locations for absolutely everything. I love boats. Not even as a connoisseur or anyone who can sail, just as an atmospheric thing. Boats are brilliant. And especially boats in 1634, 1700, boats where you can just set them to sea, and if they sailed off the map, which was like yay big, they were lost at sea. Imagine how courageous these people must have been, or how desperate. Like, everything, that entire period, boats, just wonderful things. And so my third book, which I'm writing now, is my third, in my long list of ideal locations for murder mysteries. So I've got 4. So my first 4 books will be my absolute dream list of places I want murder mysteries to be set.
Are you allowed to tell us where the next one's set?
No. It's too early. I only started writing it about a month ago.
Okay.
And the location isn't going to change, but I think it has vast implications for the plot. So I don't want to say too much until I can just spew my gut. Because I tend to, if I utter the first word about it, I'll spew the entire guts to everybody tonight, and you will have my entire thinking about the plot and every character and every twist and the ending in like 7 minutes. So we can't risk it.
Very wise, very wise. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
No problem at all.
Brill, thank you. Okay. So we have 9 readers tonight, by the way. So we're going to have 3 readers a break, 3 readers a break, 3 readers. Just so you know. So drum roll, please, folks, people at home. Danny, we're still waiting for you, so we need to know what happened with the review. Okay, I'm just putting it out there now. It is Lauren North. Let me tell you about Lauren. Lauren North writes psychological suspense novels that delve into the darker side of relationships and families. Lauren studied psychology before moving to London, where she lived and worked for many years. One Step Behind is her second novel. Please welcome the lovely Lauren North.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you so much, Vic and Simon, for having me. I am going to read from One Step Behind, which is out in ebook now and comes out in paperback on the 3rd of September with just a few other books. So it's about a doctor Jenna, who's also a wife and a mother, and also the victim of a stalker. And it's about what happens when the tables turn and her stalker is brought into hospital and suddenly the power is all hers. It's a case of how many lines is she willing to cross before to take back control of her life. So I'm going to start on page 1, chapter 1, although I did quite like Stu's page 6 start, so hopefully I won't disappoint you. So it's from Jenna. My heart is beating machine gun fire fast as I reach out to undo the new deadbolt at the top of the front door. I move to the chain next with the fluid movement of doctor's hands, calm and steady, masking the truth, keeping the shaking fear deep inside. I used to think I was invincible. I used to think nothing could rattle me, but that was before. How many ways will you find to torment me today? Where will you be today? Leaning against a tree in the park opposite our house, standing in broad daylight? Or will you be a shadow watching out of sight? My eyes itch, my muscles ache with heaviness. I can't have slept for more than 3 hours last night. 3 hours, it feels like less. Are we walking or driving today, Mummy? Beth asks from behind me. I turn around and feel the love well up inside, a visceral heat. I wish I could shield them from you. 9-year-old Beth and Archie, 6, almost 7, are standing ready at the bottom of the stairs, school shoes on, dark green book bags looped around one shoulder. Archie is a miniature version of Stuart with shaggy brown hair and a wide, toothy grin. Beth is more like me, with her fair hair, fair skin, and the red freckles that sprinkle the bridge of her nose. There is no last-minute scramble for reading books, no final cramming of spellings for the test, no lost items to hunt for in our house. They've been conditioned from the get-go in efficiency and routines. I'd love to take the credit, but it's Christy, our childminder, who's behind it. It's really hot. Can we drive? Archie asks, dragging out the final word in a whiny voice we dislike so much but can't seem to get him to stop. Good idea, let's drive, I say, as though walking was ever an option. There's an instant sigh of relief around us, as though the hallways itself has been holding its breath. It's your fault, of course, that my son is so scared. I've done all I can over the last year to hide my fear from them. But then you disappeared for a week in May, 7 whole days of not seeing you. No emails and none of your sick gifts left on my doorstep either. I was a spring uncoiling, slowly, slowly, hoping beyond hope, day by day that you'd given up. Day 7 fell on a Monday, one of the first warm days of the year, and my first school run in ages. Stuart wanted to take my car in for a service, so we walked the half a mile to Greenstead Primary School. But then you know that, don't you? You were waiting in the doorway of the corner shop, 2 roads away from the school gates. We turned onto the road and there you were, just meters from us, watching. I tensed up so tight that the world spun and I grabbed Archie's hand and then Beth's and we ran flat out, running for our lives, I felt. I only stopped when I realised I'd dragged Archie to the pavement and he grazed one of his knees. We skipped the playground lines and went straight to the office, a mess of tears and blood and fear. Mr. Bell, the head teacher, was a wave of calm and kindness over our panic. He sent Beth to class and Archie to the first aid room for a plaster, before sitting in the staff room with a strong cup of tea that I slopped all over the new carpet because my hands were shaking so badly. A final deep breath in before I down the last dregs of my tepid coffee from my mug, grabbed the car keys and ready myself to open the front door. Wait here, I say, throwing a glance back to Beth and Archie, who know without me telling them that they're not to move until I check the doorstep. I yank open the heavy wooden door a few inches, just enough to peek out without the kids seeing the tiled doorstep. It's a doll's head today. One eye is open and staring up at me. The other has been burnt into a melted hole. I bite the side of my mouth, keeping the scream inside, and slam the door shut. What is it, Mummy? Beth asks. It's nothing. Of course she knows it's not nothing. It's always something. But how can I tell my children what's out there, what you're doing to me? I run through the house and grab one of the Detective Sergeant Church's clear plastic evidence bags. Go sit on the sofa, I say, shooing Beth and Archie away, and put the TV on. They move without complaint, and when I'm sure they're gone, I open up the front door and scoop the doll's head into the bag, careful not to touch it. I can taste the coffee rising in the back of my throat, but I work quickly, desperate to get back to the kids and make things normal for them. At least there's no glass this time, smashed into 1,000 shards for me to sweep up. When the bag is sealed, I shove it into the handbag to drop to the police station on my way past, and then I wash my hands 3 times and pull myself together. I step back to the children, forcing a bright smile. Okay, we can go. I open the front door again wide this time, and the heat hits us, like the residue of candy floss on fingers. It coats our skin in a sticky film. No sea breeze today, nothing to take the edge off the heat wave. Both kids leap over the step and land on the path as though an invisible evil lurks on it. It's an effort not to do the same. So I'm going to stop there. There's a bit more to go with chapter 1, but I have a thing for writing really long chapters. So it's one step behind, and thanks very much.
Thank you so much for that, Lauren. I was so engrossed that it's definitely not the champagne on an empty stomach, certainly. Thank you so much, and we wish you all the best for the third. I mean, all the other books need to just not bother.
Thank you.
No problem at all. Okay, so Act 1 is nearly over, but we have one more reader before we go to a break. If I can get it open. It is Rachel Ward. Rachel Ward is the best-selling author of dark thrillers for young adults, notably Numbers, which was shortlisted for the Waterstones Children's Book Prize, as well as writing crime for adults. Most recently, she has been concentrating on a cosy crime series, The Ant and Bee Mysteries, based in and around a supermarket in a small English town. This series is published by Sandstone Press. Rachel lives in Bath with her family and 2 unruly dogs. She's trying to train them, honestly. Huge round of applause, everybody, for Rachel Ward.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. I'm going to be reading from Expiry Date, which is the 3rd in the Ant and Bee Mysteries series. And in this one, a body has been found in the foundations of a factory that's being redeveloped. And the body is identified as a girl who went missing 15 years ago. Bee, who's our heroine, an amateur detective who works as a checkout girl at a supermarket, she has found out that 15 years ago, the main suspect in this girl's disappearance was her dad. And she's very cross that her mum kept this a secret from her, and so they've had a row. So Queenie, that's Bee's mum, was waiting in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table with a glass of whiskey in front of her. "Sit down, love," she said as Bee closed the door. "Drinking on your own? Not a good sign. Do you want one? It might be good for, you know, the shock." "All right, I suppose. Sit down, I'll do it." Bee's hands were shaking. She clasped them together to try and still them, and waited while her mum poured whiskey into 2 glasses, which she then set on the table between them. Bee's anger was subsiding a little, and a terrible churning anxiety was starting to replace it. "So, you'd better tell me everything," said Bee, her voice trembling. Did she really want to know after all? "What do you want to know?" "I want to know why anyone would even think that Dad might have done it. Weren't you at the club together? What happened?" Queenie sipped at her whiskey, then nursed the glass on the table in front of her. "We were at the club, Bee, and it was just an ordinary evening. But I left before he did. He was having a good time and I'd had enough. I was getting a bit of a headache. I didn't want to drink any more, so I left him to it. I went home on my own." "And when did he get back?" "Much later, around midnight." "When the club closed? Bit late for chucking out time." "The club closed at 10:30. He said he went for a walk to clear his head." "Walking for an hour and a half round Kingsley? Did you believe him?" Queenie took another sip, then looked Bee straight in the eye. "This is your dad we're talking about, Bee. Of course I believed him." "But the police didn't." "They were interviewing everybody. It's their job." "Who else was there that evening?" "Loads of people. Dot and Darren, who was her partner at the time. Don't suppose you remember him. Bob and his Babs, although they left early. Babs wasn't feeling very well. Eileen and her Alf, Dean's dad. There was a band and a singer. And Tina, of course. She wanted to see the band, I think. That's why she said no to babysitting that night." And there was nothing else unusual about that evening, apart from Dad coming home later? No. Well, Mum, Dot and Darren had a row. It got a bit heated. Was that normal? It was getting normal by then. They had a bit of a fiery relationship. It probably wasn't anything, but he did storm out of the club. Did the police interview Darren? Bea knew they had done. His name had been in the online feature too. Yes, they did. Like I said, they talked to everyone. Bea's hands had stopped shaking. She trusted herself to reach for her glass and started sipping her drink. I wish Tina had babysat that night, she said. I wish none of this had happened. I liked it when she did babysit. She was nice. You would say that, Queenie sniffed. She used to let you stay up and put bloody nail polish on you on a school night sometimes. Bea frowned, surprised at the harshness of her mum's tone. Didn't you like her? I didn't say that, did I? She was all right. She was beautiful. She had something about her, Queenie conceded, but she knew it. There was an odd sort of silence. Bea was shocked at how unsentimental Queenie was about Tina. Who do you think did it, Mum? Said Bea. I don't know, love. I can't think of anyone I know who'd do something so awful. Maybe it was someone we didn't know, like one of the band or something. Queenie had finished her drink and was turning the empty glass round in her hands. Bea took a deep breath. There was something she had to ask. Honestly, Mum, said Bea, is there any part of you that thinks it was Dad? There was a pause, and then Queenie looked at her quite steadily. No, Bea, he wasn't perfect, but he'd never kill anyone, never hurt anyone. Soon afterwards, they both went to bed. Bea rang Aunt. Everything okay? It was surprising how reassuring she found his voice. Sort of. I'll tell you about it tomorrow. Just wanted to ring to say I survived. Glad about that, mate. You and Queenie all right now? Not all right, but a bit better. Good. There was an alarming snorting noise in the background. Bloody hell, Bea, did you hear that? Was that a dog snoring? Other end, Bea. Geez, what's this dog been eating? Sweet dreams, Aunt. Ha! As if. See you tomorrow. She shut down her phone and resisted the urge to open up her laptop and keep digging. She'd seen and heard enough for one day, but her brain wouldn't switch off. She kept replaying her conversation with Queenie. Where had her dad been for that crucial hour and a half? Why had Queenie been so cold and dismissive of Tina? And one other thing. He wasn't perfect. What did that mean? Her mum and dad had always been happy, hadn't they? They'd had the ideal marriage, cut cruelly short by Harry's cancer. Bea had nothing but good memories of him, still felt cheated that he wasn't there anymore. He was perfect. He was, she thought to herself, and then realised how childish it sounded. Nobody's perfect. We're all an odd mix of good and bad. But there was bad, and there was wicked. And nothing anyone would ever say would convince Bea that her dad was a murderer. And if half of Kingsley thought that he was, well, she'd just have to prove them wrong. So that's a little excerpt, and the rest of the story is Bea trying to clear her dad's name. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Rachel. It's been a real pleasure hosting you. Okay, so we are going to our very first break of the evening, but we will be back in 5 minutes.
I love it too. Oh, I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times, they are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. where I was born. Early, Lord, one frosty morning,